Hey y'all, welcome to the Clock Tower. I'm Colton, here with Brandon. Pretty important show today. We're talking about the JP stream that just happened early this morning. As of you watching this, we are recording this bit about a week in advance because there's some stuff we wanted to talk about before we talk about the JP stream. And because the JP stream ends so early in the morning on Tuesday, we wanted to get as much of this out of the way as we possibly could, so that we can record that and actually get that out into the world as quickly as possible on Tuesday. Let's talk about something else that happened in Weiss recently, which is the launch of Decklog. It's a website where players can create their own decks for Weiss and Vanguard and link them to a code that can then be used to share the deck with other people and potentially with tournament organizers down the road. It's an interesting little tool. Brandon, what do you think of the newly launched Bushiroad Decklog?
I think it's going to be a good tool to be able to use to submit your deck lists for competitions. The decklog allows you to be able to basically click on the image of the character in order to submit it that way. So you can kind of verify with your deck which version of the card, whether the higher rarity or lower rarity, depending on what your deck looks like, and make sure all the cards match up with the cards you have before submitting it. I think it's going to be a faster way of submitting it in that moment to make it easier for deck inspections with the visual images right in front of it.
I think long term, the plan is to sync this up with Bushinavi, which is something that Bushiroad has created as a deck submission / tournament organization app that is currently being used in JP, and it only makes sense that that will eventually make its way to English. Decklog seems like the way that Bushiroad is going to want players to put together their decks for future tournaments at some point, as opposed to paper and pen, as opposed to submitting PDFs. Long term, I think it'll be easier for Bushiroad for sure. I'm not looking forward to players getting disqualified because they clicked the wrong rarity on Decklog. That is going to happen, and I'm already upset about the fact that that's going to happen. But aside from that, I think this is a useful tool. But I would also say that this is a useful tool basically only for tournament organizing and sharing decks in that kind of context. This is not an Encore Decks replacement, nor do I think is it trying to be. There's no real way to search decks. There's no way to browse different decks and see what people are playing in sets like you can on Encore. Deck lists can only be shared via sharing the deck code as of right now. This isn't going to replace Encore decks in terms of like using it to actually build a deck and play test a deck, but it's definitely a useful tool for tournaments. And assuming that we end up with Bushinavi in English at some point, I think long term this is the way that we are going to be submitting decks for official tournaments.
Especially when this came out, I think that initial question was definitely, does Decklog in some way take the role of Encore decks in order to have this as its replacement? And I think ultimately the answer is no. I think they are ultimately two separate formats of what they're trying to do, where Decklog is looking more towards tournament registration and submission, which you can have it be more secret in regards to, hey, I'm only submitting these 4 letters as the submission for my deck, as opposed to Encore decks where it then becomes visible for other people to see and say, oh, hey, wait, now everybody can see what deck I'm bringing. It kind of takes out that element of surprise.
Yeah, it's not in Bushiroad's interest to mess with Encore decks, just because it's, one of the places that every player goes to see cards and to build decks and to see what other cards people are playing in a set. It is to Bushiroad's advantage for people to see their product more often so that people will buy their product more often. So I would be really surprised if Bushiroad is going to try to push this as an Encore Decks replacement, because it isn't. It doesn't do, 2/3 of the things that Encore Decks does that makes Encore the hub that it is for Weiss players online. And I hope that they don't try to make it that way. I hope that that's not something that's in their future. Encore Decks isn't broken, don't fix it. Overall, this looks like a pretty useful program for its purpose, and we'll see if Bushiroad implements it as the main way of submitting decks for official tournaments in the future. So that's what we wanted to talk about now, which means that this part of the show is over. We're going to move now into what we will record the morning after the stream on the early morning hours of September 14th. So we're going to kick it to future Colton and Brandon, who are technically now past Colton and Brandon, I suppose, but we're going to kick it to what we recorded on the morning of the 14th after the stream. Hey y'all, it's Colton and Brandon, Tuesday morning, the morning after the Bushiroad JP strategy presentation. We have some updates, new set announcements like we expected. Let's quickly dive into those. Keep in mind that these are all JP sets announced for Japanese Weiss. We will talk about their ramifications for English in a moment, but these, for now, are all just JP releases. In the order that they were announced on stream, first, Gochi Usa is getting a re-edit set on January 28th. Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid did get an announcement for April 8th. We'll have another Bang Dream set, a 5th anniversary booster set on March 16th. Decapo 3, a 30-card PR set with some alternate arts, will drop in November of this year. On May 14th of next year, Tokyo Revengers will be a world premiere release. It'll come out in English and JP simultaneously. Again, that will be May 14th. And Project Sekai Colorful Stage will drop February 11th, featuring Hatsune Miku. This is an eclectic mix of titles. Tokyo Revengers, the subject of some conversation because of the leak that happened a little over a week ago now. There were some screenshots taken of the Bushiroad website with Tokyo Revengers getting a May release in English. There were some good reasons to question whether or not that was valid. It was true. You and I, we talked about this, and we thought that one way or the other, it was probably real.
Yeah.
But what's surprising, I think, for both of us, is that it's going to be a world release, a simultaneous release. We were thinking it would just come out in JP, early next year, and then we'd maybe get the May release in English. But we're getting it as a simultaneous release, which is something that they don't really do.
Yeah, they don't do that too often, to get a set in English and JP out at the same time. Being able to time that for a world premiere release is actually a really interesting thing. And it immediately affects the English side of the coin right off the bat, that this one from the releases is guaranteed coming to English and announced for English in the JP stream.
Yeah, easily the biggest English headline is that for sure we're getting Tokyo Revengers. The graphic that was leaked said May 13th.
And that's also been what's updated on the Weiss websites for English, is that it's coming on May 13th in English and May 14th in JP.
And that may just be because the 13th is a Friday and English releases happen on Fridays. In any case, we are getting Tokyo Revengers for sure. The leak turned out to be legitimate. So you can just add Tokyo Revengers to the end of the current schedule. So let's talk about that schedule and then what comes next. So quick recap: Slime 2, Alice 2, Quintuplets, Data Bullet, Ruby all coming out through the end of this year with announced dates. In 2022, we're getting Bang Dream in January. Rent a Girlfriend, Mushoku Tensei, and Hololive are expected in early 2022. We're expecting them to be February, March, April, maybe not respectively, but those three sets should be what drop in those 3 months. And now we have Tokyo Revengers filling in the May 2022 slot. We basically know for sure, almost to the day, what we're getting for the next 8 months. What happens in the back half of 2022 is where it starts to get interesting. Because in June, we will have, if the pattern holds, as we've seen in the past couple of years, an English exclusive, which could be anything. We've talked about possible English exclusives here before. There's definitely a lot on the table. they seem to lean more towards the nerd cartoons than anything else. So something in like the Steven Universe vein, I think makes a lot of sense. I do think there's a very real chance we get Doki Doki Literature Club. I think that's probably a potential release, especially given that it just got a re-release as a game, and that re-release is doing very well. It could just be an anime that's popular in English. Things like Demon Slayer come to mind. Tons of potential options for what a summer 2022 English exclusive could be.
Yeah, there are so many possibilities that it makes it hard to even have some kind of leaning as to what direction it could go. We've yet to see an English original be a kind of second set of any kind. They've really been more of that kind of introductory kind of set. Having a potential new set, new title coming in with a wide variety of things to pull from just makes it really interesting as to what could that title be.
So now it's time to look ahead, looking at the second half of 2022, so about 9 months out. What has been announced in JP that seems to be a likely candidate for English? And I think going back through JP releases, going back to the start of 2021, I think there are a handful of sets that still make sense. I think Princess Connect makes sense because it did get a global release. The Day I Became a God is reasonably popular. That could still make its way over.
The new quintessential quintuplets set 2.
Mm-hmm.
I expect that one to come up through the end of this next year. So then they'll put about a year's space in between the first release.
Yeah, especially now that we actually have quintuplet stuff in English.
Mm-hmm.
It makes more sense that, there might be more quintuplet stuff down the line. World Trigger, still obviously a thing that could happen. I still expect to see Grand Order Camelot, just because I think it makes a lot of sense for them to follow that up. They tend to release the sequel sets, but we'll see. I also think we're almost definitely going to get Don Machi. That just makes too much sense.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that one's pretty easy. And then out of the stuff that was announced last night, I'm gonna be honest, I am pretty pessimistic that we get almost anything that was announced last night. As much as I want Dragon Maid, as much as Dragon Maid was the top of my wish list, I'm concerned about its chances because the promo that they showed us is exclusively manga resources. And we very rarely get a manga based set. It's happened before. We got it with Fujimi last year. A set that honestly, by just about every metric, we should not have gotten, and was a real surprise when it got announced. So it's possible. It's not impossible. But my optimism for Dragon Maid is definitely dampened, given that it's going to be likely, based on the promo art, based around the manga, not the anime. Because we tend to get anime stuff. So I'm not optimistic. I feel like it's cleared the first hurdle that it needs to clear, but that second hurdle is even taller than the first one. So as much as I want to see it, I don't think we get it.
Last season, we were pretty confident with a lot of the things coming into English. The Slime to Alicization to Heaven's Feel to Well Assumed. I mean, Data Bullet was pretty well assumed too. All of those really being more like sequel sets. The back half of this year is really more sequel sets than anything else.
I think we're going to learn a lot more at the winter stream, because that tends to be their biggest stream of the year. That'll be December 7th. I think that's going to tell us the rest of Bushiroad's plans for JP for 2022, and by proxy, kind of tell us what's happening in English in 2022. I think we'll get the Bang Dream stuff. the 50th anniversary. Bang Dream's always going to get support. It's a Bushiroad product, so it just makes sense that they just keep pushing out more of these sets. So I expect to see more Bang Dream. The Project Sekai Colorful Stage is interesting because it has Hatsune Miku in it. It could theoretically be Neo Standard with the Project Diva stuff, which would be funny to, bring that set basically back from the dead. And, Miku is a popular person pretty much worldwide. I could see it. I could see it in English, especially because, again, back half of the year, it's empty. And there aren't a ton of real obvious choices for those, 5 slots from July to November that need to be filled with previously released JP products. If I were to put a list together of the 5 sets that I think will be released from July to November 2022, I would say most likely we're looking at, in no particular order, Quintuplets 2, Danmachi, Bang Dream, Grand Order Camelot, and I'm going to say The Day I Became a God. Those are probably the 5. Quintuplets 2, Danmachi, Grand Order Camelot, the new Bang Dream stuff, The Day I Became a God. And then December 2022, we'd get an English exclusive. That'd be my guess at this juncture. What about you, Brandon?
I can see quintuplets. I can see Grand Order. I can even see Danmachi. I can be optimistic for Kobayashi.
I'm glad one of us can. I hope you're right. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong on that, because this is literally the set I wanted in English more than any other. So I hope you're right, but I don't feel great about it. It was a very mixed reaction for me when I saw the announcement.
And the last one being the Bang Dream set.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. We could be wrong on this, but I feel like we can be pretty confident in at least 3 of those. Bang Dream, Quintuplets 2, and Camelot. They feel pretty safe.
It's realistically because they're sequel sets, essentially.
Yeah.
They're sets that already have some kind of support in English, so
Yeah.
those ones make the most sense to make their way over.
The hope, obviously, is that some of these sets are competitive with Data Live specifically. Hopefully we can balance some of this meta, But we'll see. Because we're coming up on, the way the current release schedule looks, we're looking at a full year of just outright DAL dominance with no real answer in sight. So the hope is that there will be something printed that can make the meta competitive again soon, but we'll see. Thank you for joining us for this somewhat early in the morning, somewhat off the cuff version of Clock Talk. We'll be back on Thursday with 5 cards, 5 minutes for Slime. I'll have a deck tech next Tuesday. We'll have gameplay for that the following Thursday. Until next time, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and have a good one.
We'll see you then.